there's been so many people getting excited about goals for 2021 year. Among them, lots of people online. So we're going to share this on Facebook and on my website. So, but thanks for contributing. And I hope that each of you will share an example so that it's not just my example that we can then record and then share. So you are rock stars or podcasters or YouTubers today. And thanks for helping me. So what I felt was really important is to set this up and let's learn from 2020. Everybody talks about how hard 2020 was, but there's been lots of blessings and lots of gold as well, but lots of challenges, as we all know. Even if you haven't had health challenges, there's been lots of financial challenges and schooling and change and tons of change. So what an important year to learn from. And so what I want to do is kind of go through, let's see if I can advance this slide. There we go. This is one of my favorite quotes. Nelson Mandela is one of my heroes. You guys, I think, know I served my mission in South Africa. My mother's from South Africa. Cheryl and I have been back a couple times. I just love the country and I love what Nelson Mandela did and basically avoided civil war and all sorts of things through forgiveness and humility and patience and endurance and all those things. But so I think it's apropos that this is his quote that I'll share to kind of as our theme for our call today. I never lose, I either win or learn. And he wasn't a braggart. And when he says that, remember, he was in prison for what was it, 29 years. And so it takes a lot of patience to keep learning till you eventually win. So I love that idea that we're either winning or learning. And that's a great mindset to have, even if, and Nelson Mandela had lots of trials and tribulations in his life. So I love it. I think he's uniquely qualified to be able to speak to this. I never lose, I either win or learn. So the objectives of agenda for today, we're going to set up 2021 goal setting. And the agenda is real briefly. I think some of you have seen this in advance, so hopefully you can help me with some of the examples section there on the second last agenda item. And then I'll end with some suggested next steps and how we set up 2021. Benefits of doing this type of thing, it just creates gratitude and a perspective of appreciation, a great mindset to find the gold in anything that goes on. And certainly 2020 has been a year of change. And just as importantly, it generates ideas for goals for the following year. What was it? I think Einstein's been quoted with that saying that the definition of insanity is, how did he say it? It's
doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting a different result.
Thank you, Lori Allred. And then finally, it solidifies the learning process. I'd hate to think that we just go in cold to goal setting. Let's learn from last year, and it's all part of the context and perspective as we go. So how does a good year-end review work? Basically, and I'll give some pro tips or coaching notes, so please don't be overwhelmed by this because you can certainly start with just one area. But I am suggesting that you look at all 7 areas or 7 areas. You may have an 8th, you may only do 5, you may do 1. But this is just to give you an example of some of the things you may look at to review in areas: physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, relationship, work, and financial. You notice I broke out, emotional and relationship. I broke out work and financial because I think they really are different areas to review and different goals. You can, hopefully you're developing different work streams other than just your primary work on the financial side to find financial security, for example. So I think it's important to separate those out. And then I'm suggesting ask 4 questions for each role. What went well? What were the highlights? What are the blessings? What are the things you're grateful for? And I'm hopeful that you can share maybe one with me today. And then what didn't go well? What are some of the setbacks or areas for improvement or trials, whatever word you want to go? And then how can we learn from that more importantly? And then what I'm hoping is I'm going to teach you the 7 whys. It's kind of based, some of you might know 5 whys, maybe from business. You might know that as kind of a problem solving technique. I've got 7 W's. You certainly don't have to use all 7 W's to learn. But what you'll see is, rather than just saying, what did I learn from that highlight or that setback, some of it needs a little deeper digging. And so In that case, you can use 7 or you can use 4 whys, at least dig a little deeper to find the gold, find the learnings in some of the trials or setbacks. And then as always, what are the actions from your learnings that are going to feed into your 2021 goal setting? Any comments, outbursts, questions about that slide? Anything come to mind?
In our business, we have a year-end review process, obviously and a performance review process where the managers meet with all of their direct reports individually. And it's funny because what went well and what didn't go well, your 2 points there are key elements of that review process. And you're right, they guide what is it that we think that we should do next year? Do we think it should be related to what didn't go well this year? Or do we just want to forget about that, pretend that they're not related? The reality is they're very related.
Yeah.
So some familiar ingredients in there.
Yeah, Mike, great point. This is very relevant to personal, family, small team, or organization. You can apply these same principles as Mike is pointing out. And, I love the strength-based leadership documentation, and some of you guys know there's training around that, there's books around that, and that really highlights, what are you good at, what are your strengths. But I think it's just as important to positively look at what didn't go well as Mike is saying, to set up the next year rather than out of context or not looking at it at all. Or
something, Rick, that's been a little bit, I would say, problematic in our business actually around this is that a lot of our employees have annual goal agreements, win-win agreements, kind of rooted in Covey there, with a monetary bonus attached to it. And so when the year end comes around, a lot of these employees take a defensive posture, trying to move the goalposts to prove that everything that they did that year was actually correct, and that they did achieve their goals, because based on their ability to sell the fact that they did or didn't achieve their goals, it will amount to money that they may or may not get paid. And so it's interesting because that environment that we've set up actually doesn't lend itself to a very objective analysis of what didn't go well. What does is lead
great, Mike.
People, give them an incentive to not be very open about what didn't go well because it shows weakness, and they may not get their full bonus, but in fact, they could be denying themselves the very opportunity to address a weak point and to improve it.
Yeah, Mike, that's a great point. And if at all possible, on a company, corporate-wise, I recommend to decouple the learning process from the bonus review process for that very reason. And it's not always possible, and it maybe is too much work to do that. But if you can, the only way to really dig deep and learn and have people open is to decouple it. But I know that's hard to do, or it creates more work in there. But okay, thank you, Mike. Any other insights from the personal or company level from anyone on this slide? Okay, so here's some, and again, I said that this doesn't have to be, use all 7 W's when you're learning from either a win or a setback. It can be just ask the question, what didn't go right and what can I do differently next time? But with some more difficult issues, it does take a little deeper. So let me just kind of work through these 7 areas and then get your feedback, and then I'll share an example and then get hopefully you guys sharing an example too. And again, doesn't have to be all 7 W's, but just something that you either experienced a success or a setback, and what did you learn? So just to review it very briefly, for those really tough to solve issues, those things that you really can't seem to solve very quickly, I suggest there's 7 good W's. What was the original goal or expectation? That's a pretty simple one to start with. Why was that? This is probably one of the most important questions to ask. What is the reason this was so important to you? Because perhaps we can't do the goal in the original expectation form, but if you really understand the deeper reason, and I'll share an example of this in a second, then you can actually get, okay, well, I could do something differently to get at the real reason. So it uncovers and unearths greater possibility. So I'll share that in an example if that's not clear right now. And then a real honest assessment. What was the result? What did I actually achieve versus the goal and the expectation? And then first a level analysis of why did you achieve those results? What happened? And then what I'm suggesting, question 5 may be extra if you already got the gold out or the real answers to question 4, but ask one more time, why else? Okay, so you answered it. I didn't get it because of this. Why else? Is there another reason? And try to get all the reasons down. That's why I'm adding that extra question in question 5. And then number 6, what can you do next time to improve your results? And I give a little cue there, start, stop, continue. That's always a good way to think about it. Because there's some things I already started, I just need to continue, do more of, or I need to start some behavior, or I need to stop a behavior in order to improve the results. And then question number 7 is one of those additives, dig a little deeper. What else? So you got the cream on the top on what else you can do next time on your action plan, but what else can we be doing? In particular, if you're doing this as a family or a small team, that brainstorming of asking one more level question can get out some more gold rather than just the first response to the answer. So any thoughts or feedback about this process, insights that you want to share?
I like your doubling up on the questions with the else questions, the why else, what else, because it's so true. When you ask someone those questions, there's always another answer, which means the story's not over. And so until you run it dry, there may be something more there. So I really like those else questions because they do that for you. Also, your number 2, I like that because a goal typically is a task that you want to get done because of some underlying reason. And quite often, once you've agreed that this is the task that we're going to do, the underlying purpose fades away and all focus is just on this task and doing this task. Maybe it's a big task, a project. And sometimes while you're working on that task, the underlying purpose for it has changed.
Yep.
But the focus is not on that. It's on the task that you said you'd get done. And you're so focused on it that in fact, you could consume, depending on what you're talking about, it could be hundreds, thousands of man hours consumed in some direction. And a question I like to ask when I see this happening is, sorry, what is it that we're trying to achieve right here?
Yeah.
And quite often when you ask that question, a person takes a step back and they look at it and they say, yeah, I see what you're saying. Because it might be just one layer back that you need to step back to realize that why was it that we were spending all this money doing this again?
Yeah.
And they might say, oh, because we needed, that's right.
That's changed, or yeah.
Half our office is empty. Yeah, we might actually not need that now.
Yeah, and that's a good way to put it. These extra questions are help you get unstuck and go deeper. Thanks, Mike Leavitt. Anybody else with insights or questions, comments on this slide? Okay, so here's a couple of best practices. I hope this hasn't been, overwhelming. So I'm going to suggest that's why I've done this. This is on December 14th, 2020 that we're taping this. I really suggest you take a week or two to do this exercise. Yeah, take an hour and you could literally do this exercise in an hour, but I really recommend that you come back to it in a few days after you've let it soak, after you've looked at your 7 areas and asked what's gone well, what can you improve, and then, what can I learn from it? The other pro tip, if you will, that I'd suggest is that you ask help from experts, coaches, and trusted advisors. Or there's great books or YouTube videos today. The example I just went through this year is I was a pretty lousy golfer and I started to golf a lot this year and I wasn't getting as better, which shocked me. And once I started to get some coaching by a really good golf pro and watch some YouTube videos, my score started to get better. So there's a great book. I don't know if anybody, it's a first book recommend on today's call, but it's a book called Talent is Overrated by Jeff Colvin. I love it. And basically the premise of that book is that anybody can get better. It's not the purely intellect of how people get it. It's people that do deliberate practice. And he uses those 2 words very deliberately. It's one thing to work hard and practice. It's another thing to work smart. And he uses the word deliberate to mean it's got to be good practice. It's got to be the right practice in order to get better. And that golf example is a perfect example of that. I was practicing, but I was practicing the same old bad habits. And the ball was hook, hook, hook. But once you get some expert insights and feedback and direction and coaching, you're able to get better. The example he shares in the book is Polish gentleman that this is a true story, that to put out an ad for a wife to say, anyone want to get married? I want to raise 3 world-class chess champions. And so unbelievably so, he got a response to that. And his name was Polzar, I believe. And Polzar got a response, got married, had 3 girls, and it was said in their library that they had over 1,000 books on chess, and they had chess masters coaching the girls. And long story short, the girls turned out to be world-class chess champions. So the whole idea that with deliberate practice, you can develop improvement, maybe not expertise. I may not be Tiger Woods in my golf game, but I can show improvement through deliberate practice. And that's kind of the idea there, and hopefully a takeaway on today's call here. Pondering also, I have you think about sometimes to really tricky, deep setbacks or problems, the answer isn't always evident. Sometimes it's real easy, right? But sometimes it isn't always evident. Start with asking the right question and let your mind think on these big questions and come back to it over time. The one I had here is healthy eating. You know, many of us struggle with how to eat properly, eat appropriately. And the question that my sister Tracy taught me was, what can I do to treat food as a medicine, not as a comfort? And when you ask that question, answers start coming. And as you think and ponder about that, asking the right questions, you can sometimes really get some deep insights into what changed some very tricky habits. So anyhow, I'll take a breath here in a second, but let me finish this last point, and then I want to get your insights on this to be added. Start small. We do not want to get your frontal cortex all lit up in fight or flight here by, oh my goodness, Rick's suggesting this massive learning and goal setting process. Start small. Start with analyzing just one important role. We don't want to get you all stressed out. Oh, this is going to be too much work. If it works for you and if you get your juices flowing, you can always start and look at the other roles. So if this feels like a little bit overwhelming, I'd highly recommend you just start with one important role, one important area that you want to learn from, and then take that one area into goal setting in 2021. Because I often think people take on too much too fast and it overwhelms us. And that's what stops us from accomplishing our goals. So anyhow, let me take a breath there and get anybody's insights and comments on this slide.
Yeah, I think the deliberate effort makes a lot of sense, and starting small. Kind of responding to your request for anecdotes.
Yes, please.
I think I recall my experience playing football, and as a football player, I was able to go to BYU, and I was able to be a walk-on there. And essentially, what that means is I tried out, and they let me, start essentially at the bottom rung of the team, and I was able to move my way on up slowly but surely. And it was definitely a long process, an arduous process. I was cut like 2-3 times, and so it wasn't a very straight path. And I definitely saw significant improvement as I stuck to it and kept at things. And I noticed that the greatest improvement that I saw, and the fastest improvements that I saw came from when I was doing more deliberate practice and deliberately trying to focus and get down to that minute detail of okay, I need to make sure that my helmet stays on this side of this guy's helmet on this specific play, in this specific formation, in this specific, offense they're running or whatever it is. And so once I was able to drill it down to that level of minutia, I was able to build from skill or technique to other skill or technique. And so I would go into practice and say, okay, I'm going to do X and Y today. And it's going to be very specific. I'm going to make sure that my helmet stays on this side for this play, and that I keep my helmet in this place at this play, or make sure that I get my hands where they need to be, and on each play. And so once I got it down to that level of minutia and only focused on one or maybe two things every day to focus on, it was a lot better and a lot faster that I saw the improvements come. And so I really like the idea of being very deliberate about it and getting down to some measurable tasks that you can do to make those improvements, and really focusing in and digging in on those to make sure that you're making the progress that you need to.
Yeah, well said, Jameson. And just to put a bow around your BYU story, didn't you start the last couple of years an outside linebacker or inside? Where were you?
Yeah, I was eventually, I eventually did start, and I actually was a team captain. So
Yeah.
I think what a lot of guys saw there, because it was funny, I think my year, there were maybe 3 or 4 of us team captains. So there were 4 team captains, and I think 3 of us were walk-ons. And so, you know, people recognized, you know, the effort that we put in, and the improvements and the hard work and whatnot. And that was kind of the culture of our team.
Love it. Great example. Yeah, that's a fantastic example. Okay. Let's see. Let me go back here. One more. Okay, so I think I have, yeah, this is, and again, in your examples, don't worry about answering all the 7 whys, but as Mike and I already talked about, there's some value in some areas to dig a little deeper through some of the extra why or why else questions. But here's just an example of using the 7 W's. You can see the original goal here that Cheryl and I had this year was to make some trips to Canada to visit our parents. They're aging, they're in their 80s. Both sets of parents live a block apart. And so it's been our tradition lately to try to do 2 or maybe 3 trips, or they come down a 3rd time. And we were unable to do that this year, obviously, and everyone's experienced on this call, and the listeners, some isolation from family. So this is the example that we had. And then the second question is, well, why? What was the original intent between making trips to the frozen tundra of Southern Alberta, Canada? And it was obviously, the why was to connect with parents. So as Mike illustrated earlier, and I did, this is the real gold of, by asking that extra question, we're able to find different solutions. So the real reason is to make connections. What was the result? We weren't able to travel to Canada, obviously, and the why and why else are the COVID-19 restrictions, the 14-day quarantines. Canada actually had a real lockdown as compared to even us here in the States. So very difficult to travel. And this number 6 question here, what else can you do next time, is actually during the year, we started to do different behaviors and different habits to try to get back to question 2, why? Get the connection. So obviously we started with more phone calls, then we taught them FaceTime, and then Zoom calls. In fact, oh my goodness, we've just had so much fun recently. We had a gratitude call with both of our parents, our kids, our grandkids on at the end of Thanksgiving, on the Sunday Thanksgiving, for an hour. And everyone shared on Zoom with our parents. It took a little teaching to my parents in particular. I hope they're not listening, but I know my dad will. And we just enjoyed a great connection with all of us together, sharing, you know, what we're grateful for in 2020. And then yesterday, my sister organized, one of our nieces is getting married, and Jessica Sheffield, Jameson, is getting married. And then, so we had a Zoom call meeting Jessica and Havid, and we had the whole family on for about 75 minutes, getting to know and asking many questions and having a lot of fun. So great ways using technology to make these connections. And then what's going on? What else can we do? Well, they're big card game players. And so I'm trying to set up so Cheryl and I can be playing with our parents over the Christmas holidays, some online card games, because that's one of the main things we do when we go visit them. So lots of things you can do. Originally, we were very disappointed. Obviously, there's a lot of loneliness and going on, but there is ways that we as family, and Cheryl and I in particular, can make these connections, going back to the real reason of why we set this goal in the first place. So anyhow, I hope that's illustrative, and hope my dad wasn't too embarrassed by me telling that Zoom call story. But okay, anybody else want to share kind of a learning from last year, either a success you had or a setback. And again, it doesn't have to be using all 7 W's, but if you wouldn't mind sharing the story, who wants to start?
I'll share something quick.
Thanks, Lori.
I agree with Mike. I think it's good to come back and go back and ask why else. I think often for us, when we do go over the end of the year, and I think that sometimes we just want to hype ourselves up on what we accomplished, like, because when you go back, the saying that people overestimate what they can get done in a day, but underestimate what they can get done in a year. And so it's fun for us to go back and see, like, look at all the things that happened this year. Like in a year, so much happens. And I think it's always been surprising to us to go back and see that, oh my gosh, so much happened and there's so much that we can be happy about. But it is really important to go back and go, okay, but what could we have done better? And to go back to your other slide, one thing that we try to do that we've gotten away from is that we go on quarterly goal setting dates where we go away and it's 24 hours and we really just grind out, like, what are we trying to accomplish? And that's been we've been doing it for several years, but the year before we'd set such big goals that we were just in the grind of just trying to survive the 2 lofty goals that we set. And so we kind of took a year off of, like, let's not even talk about it, let's just get through this. And anyway, it was good to come back and get back on that. But for us, what some of the the results are that we do get a chance to reflect on what we're doing well and what we need to work on. And that's been really good. That's been really good for us to do this. But I love this of why else, the times that we missed it, why did we miss it, what can we do in the future? Because it is really hard sometimes when you're not doing well at your goals. I don't even want to get together and talk about my goals because I feel like I'm failing at all of them. So
yeah,
I love it.
Thank you for sharing that. I just want to pick up on your first point there, that it's so important to recognize the gain versus the target, or I didn't hit my 100%, but I started at 20% and I achieved 60%. And so often we get discouraged that we didn't get to the 100% or do everything that we wanted. But I think it's really important in goal setting to recognize the gain off baseline. That is so motivational versus the other, as you said, if you, oh my goodness, I didn't do those 2 big goals, but I'm sure in those examples, you had lots of gain and improvement. So I would encourage us all to think about that in 2021, because discouragement is a huge reason why people don't set goals. And if we honor more the gain and off baseline and off the start, and remember it, as you said, it's such a powerful, motivating experience to write down everything you did get, even if you think, oh, I really didn't do that much in 2020. But when you write it down, it's super motivating. Okay, other examples. Thank you, Lori.
My daughter's texting me saying she finished early, so I have to go get her.
Okay.
So I'm bummed that I have to leave, but maybe Darren's gonna hop on.
Okay, thank you for joining.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it. Cheers. Okay. Jameson, Mike, Cheryl, any example you want to share here of the learning?
Go ahead, Cheryl.
Well, I was just going to say, just quickly, the fact to write the things down, I'm thinking of that right now because, like, as far as exercise goes, I did it this year, but I couldn't go to the gym. And so I wasn't as motivated to push myself as hard. But I'm thinking about it, but I still worked out. Maybe I didn't do as well as I do in the past, but so I like that idea of looking at the previous year and really just focusing, and being grateful for all the things that we did do, be it not perfect or not. I like that idea.
Awesome. Thanks, son. Mike?
I was going to say, most of my mental energy looking at this slide was bouncing back and forth between number 1 and 2, where, somebody's trying to do something, your item number 1,
Yeah.
because of item number 2, the underlying thing. And quite often people bump up against some opposition as to why they can't do the thing. And then all energies get backed up behind this, whatever this blockage was. And the energy is consumed talking about how bad it is and oh, can you believe it? And really focusing on all the reasons why we can't get the thing done, instead of refocusing the energy on, okay, well, if that's the case, how else could we get it done? And the amount of times I find myself in a discussion with someone where all their energy is just orbiting the reason that something can't get done, all that energy is such a waste, because if they could just push the pause button and say, okay, I totally get what you're saying. That thing there, you're never going to beat that thing. But if there was a way over here on a different path to get to that underlying reason, what do you think? And invariably, there is some solution. And the sooner you can nip that and repurpose the energy to all the reasons and ways that it could get done, everyone will be that much better off. And so I do see so many people just giving up. And we just finished our year-end reviews in our business, and I was maybe involved in, let's say, the review of 25 different employees and going through their goals. And there's many employees who, same thing, they got stuck up between the number 1 and the 2. They had something they wanted to do, some opposition came up, and here's the reason it didn't get done, as though somehow that's a reasonable explanation. And you say, well, couldn't we have done this? Oh, yeah, I guess we could. It's almost like the focus was more around how quickly can I accumulate a good list of reasons why we didn't get this thing done. That's the reason that we didn't get it done, not because I, the responsible party, didn't do my part, but look at these external factors that were insurmountable. And so, yeah, I just keep kind of hovering on that point.
Yeah, Mike, you just hit a really couple of good hot spots there on goal setting. The whole idea of victim mentality and spending all your energy to protect the ego and protect my ground, that, I'm not a bad person, that I didn't accomplish this goal at work or at home. And it was because of somebody else or something else. And to your point, and I'll use the word acceptance, the quicker you can accept and feel safe and deflect the ego and accept what happened and be realistic and honest, the quicker you can change. But if you're putting all your, and I love your word, energy, all your energy into protecting and justifying and rationalizing, all those big words that are so powerful in our mind, then you won't be able to move on and make a big difference in your family, your personal life, and your company. So, wow.
Like a personal thing from my own that I, like a goal that I was supposed to achieve last year and did not. And I'll hang myself out here on this one because I did this this last year. I had a goal, and the goal last year, this particular goal, was to travel down to the US on a benchmarking trip to a different business, but who we're friendly with. And they were going to give me the inside track on their operations and go through their locations. And I was going to bring a small group of people with me. And this could be a pretty significant project. Well, as COVID started to expand and travel started to become a problem, it started to seem that this project probably couldn't get done. And we knew that this project had potential to yield some significant improvement opportunities in our business, because this other business is more advanced than us in this particular area.
Right.
And when it started to look like, hey, we might not be able to do this, it would have been easy to say, oh, COVID, not gonna be able to get this done. And so on the first pass, some people were saying that. They're saying, oh, the benchmarking trip, it can't happen, it can't happen. So we talked to the guys down there. We said, look, the physical travel can't happen, but you know what? I was physically going to come there and ask you 100 questions, and I did write it down, and I do know what all the questions are. And so maybe you can take some pictures and we can have a chat, like maybe we can still get there, right? And so we got them to agree that we could do a virtual version of what we had intended to do. So we didn't get caught in this trap of can't get it done because COVID stopped us. But what inevitably happened is we didn't get it done. We got halfway, we got them to agree, we got to agree, then our schedules, everyone got kind of busy, and then we all fell back on this, COVID.
It won't be as good if we just do it.
We started looking at this big opposition. And so when I look at my year in review and I look at, okay, that item that was a big item, yes, some opposition came. Yes, we thought we were smart because we thought of a way that we could still achieve it. And yet that we allowed that opposition to kind of come back around behind us and pull us down. And in the end, we kind of rationalized to ourselves that really, COVID was the real reason that we didn't get this done, but it really is not. It really was not. It is an example of how we fall into that. Because in fact, if I really look right now, year in review, hindsight's 2020, say how many hours of my time would it have taken to really put that virtual benchmarking trip together, actually get it done? Probably under 20 hours. Did I have 20 hours in my last, whatever 6-month period in which this should have happened that I could have done that? Absolutely, I did. And so why did it not happen? Not because of COVID. Had nothing to do with COVID. It had to do with discipline and priorities and all these other things that are the opportunities to improve, right?
Well said. Thank you for sharing an example. That was, and be nice to my friend Mike Leavitt. I know you were busy with other priorities. So Jameson, an example or insights around learning?
Yeah, I think asking the why else is really important, and what else. I'm just thinking of this year as a family goal to help develop relationships amongst ourselves. We had a goal of getting to the beach. I think it was like 52 times. Or was it? No, it's 20. Was it 26? 26 or 52 times. Either way, we were going to go. No, it was 52 times. We were going to go once a week. And COVID hit, and everything was restricted, and so it kind of got bogged down. And then obviously we were fearful of going to the beach. If there was any, if there were any people there, we didn't want to come across any people. And obviously, as things not turned around, but as we learned more about the issue and learned about how it's transmitted, et cetera, people were able to go back to the beaches, and it was safer, and it was considered more doable. And my wife and I eventually decided that, okay, so we've missed a good chunk of this year, but we can still make it out. And then once we did that, we got to step 6, and what can we do next time? And fortunately, the year wasn't over, and so we said, okay, so what can we do? All right. So one of the benefits of having the COVID restrictions is that I'm working from home. Since I'm working from home, I can work remotely. And because I can work remotely, I can just do work in the car. I can do work at the beach. I can do work wherever. And so we could also, head to the beach on a weekday. I could do my work, the kids could play. And then once work is done, I could, hop out of the car and we could hang out at the beach until, sunset or whatever. And so we've managed to get pretty dang close with our beach days despite COVID. And so, yeah, I agree. Once you really get past the excuses and start to think critically about your current predicament and how to make things work, you can find a way and you become more creative. And I understand that sometimes it's just not possible, but in a lot of circumstances, you can definitely, make workarounds or find different ways to make it happen.
That is another great example. I love that we're talking about personal, family, work examples. And Jameson, that's an awesome one, because too many times people wake up halfway through the year, dust off their goals out of their desk, blow it off and say, oh crap, I didn't do that because of this. And COVID would have been a perfect excuse. And rather than, give up on your goals, say, okay, well, what can we do differently? Or wait till next January to set a new goal. I love it that you didn't fight the urge to let the excuses ride and find a different way to make it happen. Because we can find gold in all the change that we're about. So well said. Really appreciate you guys joining me, sharing examples. Looking forward to recording this and getting this out. Let me just finish with 5 quick points on next steps for our listeners. I hope that you'll finish your year-end in review exercise as we've outlined it here today between now and December 31st. And then start thinking about 2021. And I'll set out a template, a PDF or a framework that you can use or partially use, whatever works for you, for CI for Life subscribers. So if you're not a subscriber, go into www.ciforlife.org, subscribe, and you'll get that. And then also we're going to do a 30-day challenge to get goals off and running in January. And I've set up a Facebook site. There's about 50 plus people on there already. It's called Crush Your Goals under CI for Life, or Continuous Improvement for Life. And we're going to do updates and do something for 30 days to get one of our goals, or actually maybe two. We don't want to overwhelm the system, but something you want to start and something you want to stop. For 30 days, we're all going to monitor it together and give each other updates and crush your goals and get off to a great start in January. So a lot of things to look forward to there. And then a small ask, if people can, if you're getting the Audible book of Live Your Purpose, please give me a rating on that. Or if you're getting an Amazon copy, give me I didn't realize how authors live off these Amazon ratings. So please take time to give me that if you don't mind. And I do have a couple of free Audible copies of Live Your Purpose available. And chapter 8 is all about this goal setting process that we're talking about setting up in 2021. So special thanks to our guests, Mike Leavitt, Jameson Frazier, Cheryl Heyland, and Lori Allred. I really appreciate you guys joining me. Until next time, this has been a Continuous Improvement for Life production. Have a great day. Cheers, guys.
Hey, guys.
Thanks.